All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into an unbelievable story of love, control, and one of the most desperate acts of protection I have ever heard of, straight from Reddit. It's a story about what happens when you corner someone and they decide to push the big red button.
Okay, let's just pause on this for a second, because this one sentence right here, this is the moment the entire story pivots. It's when a friend's panic, which seemed totally over the top, suddenly makes horrifying sense. This isn't just some messy family drama. This is a fight for someone's life. Now, to really understand the absolutely explosive revenge that went down, we have to rewind. We've got to understand what our two main people, Ray and Justin, were running from in the first place. So, Ray and Justin, they grew up in what their friend described as an extremely restrictive, insular religious community. Something that sounded like it was right on the border of being an actual cult. We're not just talking about a quiet town. We're talking about a place where your entire life is controlled, and the outside world is painted as this big, scary enemy. You know, they both kind of knew something was off, and they bonded over sneaking books that the community definitely did not approve of. But then they get caught, just holding hands. And their punishment? They were forced to marry each other as teenagers. But instead of breaking them, it just lit a fire. It made them realize they had to get out. So they started planning, secretly stashing away money, until, one night, when they were 20, they just disappeared.
And they did it. They built a whole new life for themselves, hundreds of miles away from all of that. But a past like that, it has long arms. For years, their families and other people from the community would harass them relentlessly. I'm talking showing up at their house out of the blue, trying to steal their identities, just crazy stuff. They were out, but they were never, ever truly free. Okay, so let's jump forward to the event that completely shattered the peace they had fought so hard for. This is the moment that dragged their past, kicking and screaming right back into their present. Justin was out riding his bike. A car blew through a stop sign and just plowed right into him. It was a terrible, horrific accident. He was rushed to the hospital with critical injuries, straight to the ICU. His life was literally hanging by a thread. So you can imagine Ray is at the hospital, and she is having a complete and total meltdown. Justin was awake, but just completely out of it, probably from the pain meds, and she was terrified he had permanent brain damage. Her friends were there trying their best to comfort her, but, they kind of thought she was overreacting. They were just trying to keep her calm while they all waited. And right when the doctors start giving them some real hope, some actual reasons to be optimistic about Justin's recovery, that's when the past came crashing back in. And believe me, it came in like a tidal wave. Just 14 hours after the accident. To this day, nobody has any idea how they found out so fast, and that mystery just adds this whole other layer of dread to what happened next. And it wasn't just his parents. Oh no, it was a full-on delegation. Justin's parents, his uncles, his grandfather, they all showed up at the hospital, and they were not there to offer support. They were there to take over. And here's the legal trapdoor that opens up under Ray's feet. See, she and Justin had divorced, so legally she was just an ex-wife. She had no rights. His blood relatives were now in charge. And the very first thing they did with that power, they had security remove Ray and all of their friends from the ICU. Just like that, Justin was alone with the very people he had run away from. Okay, so this is where Ray's terror makes perfect sense. Her friends thought she was just being hysterical from the shock of the accident, but Ray knew the truth about their former religion. In the family's eyes, she and Justin were sinners, and they deserved to be punished by God. They literally believed that intense suffering could lead to repentance, that it would prove Justin was wrong for leaving. They didn't want him to get better. They wanted his suffering to break him and drag him back into the fold. So Ray's worst fears are confirmed when a friendly hospital worker quietly tells her that Justin's family is actively trying to get him discharged to pull him out of critical care. And that is when something inside her just snapped. This was way past being calm. This was do or die mode. Now this is the crucial part. This wasn't about revenge, not at first. This was a tactical move born from pure desperation. She thought, I need a bigger crisis. I need to start a fire back at their home, metaphorically of course. A fire so massive that they'll have no choice but to abandon the hospital and run back to deal with it. And what she did next
was just surgical. It was cold fury weaponized with years of inside information. She got on the phone, she called the IRS fraud hotline and told them everything about the family's shady business. She called the ATF and tipped them off about illegal gun sales. She reported her own uncle, a convicted felon, for possessing a bunch of firearms. Then she called Child Protective Services on the unlicensed dangerous daycare his mom was running. And then she called them again on her uncles for abusing and neglecting their own kids. She systematically took every piece of dirt she knew and used it to dismantle their entire world. So after Ray unleashes this informational firestorm, everything just goes quiet. They're all just waiting. But the first breakthrough, amazingly, didn't come from a government agency. It came from Justin himself.
Against all odds, Justin started to come around. He became clear-headed enough to understand what was happening, and he kicked his family out of the room. With them finally gone, he could start the long, slow road to recovery. And for a second, in that wave of relief, everyone almost forgot about Ray's frantic phone calls.
But those calls hadn't been forgotten. About 2 weeks later, the other shoe dropped. Hard, screaming, panicked voicemails started flooding their phones. Ray's metaphorical fire had caught, and now the family's entire world was going up in flames. And this shows the sheer scale of the devastation. The family business, the one committing massive tax fraud and dealing guns, it got investigated and eventually shut down for good. The unlicensed daycare that was putting kids at risk immediately shut down. The felonious uncle who thought he was above the law, he's now serving a 5-year prison sentence. And maybe the best part of all, Justin's younger siblings, who were being kept from school, they're now getting a proper education. Ray's reports didn't just cause a few problems. They completely dismantled a corrupt family empire. So, a year and a half later, after the smoke has cleared, where did this leave everyone? What does life even look like after a nuclear event like this?
Look, Justin will never be completely free of the scars from that accident. He's got some permanent neurological damage, some lasting tremors. But the victory column is so much longer and so much more important. He is alive. He has a full-time job, he's active, he's happy, and most importantly, he is finally, completely, 100% free from their control.
As for Ray, she admitted feeling a tiny bit of guilt at first, but that feeling didn't last. The second she remembered them trying to pull him out of the ICU, it all became clear. The choice was simple: their corrupt way of life or his actual life. For her, there's no contest, no regrets.
And really, that's the question this whole story leaves you with. I mean, it was posted on a subreddit called Pro Revenge. And yeah, it is one of the most complete takedowns you will ever read. But did it start out as revenge? Or was it just a desperate act of rescue, using the only weapon a terrified woman had left to save the person she loved?